beyond measure, and the fuel of that power is not magic or mysticism, but knowledge. The things you see, the things you feel, the things you know to be true. Sure, some will doubt you. Let them. Dare to think for yourself, to look for yourself, to make up your own mind. Because in the eternal debate for answers, the one thing that's true is what's true for you.
That was a commercial that the Church of Scientology paid millions to run during the Super Bowl as a public relations push by the religion that counts as its followers, Tom Cruise and John Travolta. What is it like, though, inside Scientology? Tonight, a primetime exclusive with the niece of its leader, David Miscavige. Jenna Miscavige Hill is the author of Beyond Belief, My Secret Life Inside Scientology, and My Harrowing Escape, and she joins me now. It's a fascinating story. I mean, it's an extraordinary book. And when you read it, and, you know, I will talk to you a little bit later about whether there's any doubt in your mind that your recollection is correct, because it's pretty shocking. But taking it as read, it paints a very disturbing picture of what appears to be a very abusive religious-style sect. Would you concur with that overview?
Yes, absolutely. Very much so.
You were effectively coerced to this as a young child. At the age of 7, you signed a billion-year contract, which sounds ludicrous. What is that?
It's basically, well, the contract is for the Scientology's clergy, which is called the Sea Organization. Which
the Sea Organization, right? Sea Organization, right? Known as Sea Org.
Yes, yes.
This is like the higher executive level of Scientology, right?
Yeah, it's Scientology's most dedicated followers. It's, you know, it's run like a paramilitary organization. You know, the people in this year, they all sign billion-year contracts, and they work 7 days a week for, you know, little to no pay, and they live communally, and, you know, they're not allowed to have children.
I mean, the pictures that the Scientology Church sent us today of this, they claim this is of the time when you were there. They all seem quite pretty pictures of what looks like a nice little holiday camp. But what is the reality of this?
The reality is that, like, these pictures, like, you know, these are all rows that we dug, all plants that we planted. This horse corral, I raked every week. That's what we did. I mean... And
you were a young child. You were like 7 and then 8, 9. How long were you doing this for?
Oh, from when I was 6 until I was 12.
Would you call it child labor?
Absolutely, it was.
How many hours a day would you have to do this?
We did the labor for 4 hours a day, every day, except on Saturdays. We did it all day. And but in addition to the labor, we also had our own individual duties, which we did for several hours a day.
And how much of your parents were you allowed to see?
We saw our parents once a week, and it was overnight on Saturday and for a few hours on Sunday morning.
How did it feel to you at the time? Did it feel normal because you were around everybody else doing the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, it was normal. That's all that I knew, but I also felt like sad about it, but I felt like I wasn't normal for feeling that way.
Your parents eventually break out of the church, but you're left in there. How did that feel to you?
Well, at the time, it was my decision to stay, you know. Unfortunately, I hadn't seen my parents throughout so much of my life. I mean, from when I was 12 until I was 18, I saw my mom 2 times the entire time.
In 6 years?
Yes, yes, when I was a child. And so by the time they wanted to leave, I had sort of built my life around my friends, and I was brainwashed, you know. The church was my life, and I wanted to stay there.
Your uncle, David Miscavige, is the leader of the Church of Scientology. Did you have much to do with him through this period?
I mean, I definitely saw him throughout. I had a close relationship with his wife, my Aunt Shelley, and I definitely spent I definitely saw her far more than I saw my own mom.
Is he an evil man?
Yes. I mean, as you'll read in my book, like, he has both sides, though, you know. Like, when I was younger, growing up, you know, you sort of see a different side of him, but then you see how things gradually change. And I don't know if that was an evolution of his personality or if it was how he, you know, talked to me as a child and then as I became an adult, you know.
And in terms of how the evilness, if you like, manifested itself, how would you articulate that?
I mean, as a child, you know, of course, the labor that we've already, you know, spoken about. But I would say the worst part of Scientology is that, you know, it's their doctrine or the highway. If you don't agree with Scientology teachings, you know, you either have a word that you don't understand or it's because you've done something bad, which is what is so ironic about that Super Bowl ad. You know, it talks about how, you know, seekers of knowledge and think for yourself, but you can't think for yourself when you're there.
Well, there's a fascinating part of this where you have Chinese lessons,
Right.
which are not actually lessons in how to speak Chinese, but they're based on
Yeah.
what L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, discovered when he went to China. Tell me about that.
Yes, I mean, basically we were required to repeat quotes from L. Ron Hubbard's works in unison until we would, like, they would have a big piece of butcher paper and we would read from those, and then we had to learn them so well that we could do it without the paper there.
And that was because he'd gone to China and he'd seen this happening in Chinese schools and liked the idea of it.
Right, yes. He thought that was an effective way of teaching, I guess. But essentially, you know, we were learning things and to learn them verbatim without actually examining the information.
I mean, looking back, did you feel completely brainwashed?
When I look back, yes, definitely. I mean, I didn't even know what I liked or what kind of person I was. I was just basically a robot of the church.
Let's take a break. Let's come back and talk about the celebrity aspect of this, because Tom Cruise, John Travolta and others have tried to make it sound like a really sexy thing to be part of. But there's clearly a very sinister side to this. I want to know whether celebrities got treated differently to people like you.
I think it's a privilege to call yourself a Scientologist, and it's something that you have to earn. And because a Scientologist does, he or she has the ability to create new and better realities and improve conditions.
Tom Cruise praising the Church of Scientology. I'm back with my primetime exclusive with former member Jenna Miscavige Hill, niece of Scientology leader David Miscavige. Jenna, before we go any further, let's read this statement from the Church of Scientology. It reads in part, because it's quite lengthy. The Church will not discuss private matters involving Miss Hill, nor any of the efforts to exploit Mr. Miscavige's name. We note the recollections in Miss Hill's book about her schooling are dramatically at odds with the recollections of 30 of her classmates. The Church has long respected the family unit while accommodating and helping those raising children. The Church does not engage in any activities of mistreat, neglect, or force children to engage in manual labour. The Church follows all laws with respect to children. Claims to the contrary are false. So you're telling a bunch of lies, apparently?
Yeah, I mean, of course those kids are going to say that. They're still in the church. That's all they've known. But, you know, it'd be interesting to find out from the church how many of those kids actually have a high school diploma. How many of them have gone to college? I mean, I would be shocked if it was even more than 10 of the kids at the ranch. I would be shocked that if it was 10 at all.
Do they let anybody go on the ranch? Any outsiders?
I think that the church sold the property, so they no longer own it. So it's like,
presumably they have places like this elsewhere, right?
yeah, but the church has a rule that Sea Org members can't have children. So I think that the numbers of children who are there have gradually dwindled down.
Let's turn to the celebrity aspect of this, because, as I said, Tom Cruise, John Travolta and others have made efforts to make it all sound great, the Scientology church. What is your reaction to people like Tom Cruise when you hear him speak like that?
I mean, I think that, you know, either he does know what's going on and he's not talking about it, or he is willfully ignorant about it. I mean, people who endorse an organization like this, I feel like they have a responsibility to know everything about it and know what they're endorsing.
And what is fascinating is your husband, Dallas, who you met when you were still in the church, he worked at the Scientology Celebrity Center in Los Angeles, and from what I could tell from the book, completely different environment to non-celebrity workplaces that the Scientology church have. Tell me about the distinction.
I mean, obviously the church itself is much nicer. It's a much more beautiful church. I mean, yeah, celebrities have their own private entrances. You know, there's beautiful restaurants there. They have their own classrooms.
Any child labor?
Things like that you wouldn't run across there. Things with that are not dealt with at that church. So members from there who get in trouble, they get sent to another location to be dealt with. So they would never run into that sort of thing and be like, oh, what's happening there?
Do you think these celebrities are being duped?
I think that partially, and, you know, I mean, this information is out there. It's on the internet, it's on TV, and so, you know, it is out there. So part of it, you know, must be some sort of willful ignorance.
At one stage, the church tried to separate you and Dallas, your now husband, when they found out what was going on, and you felt suicidal. You actually, you know, you were on the verge of committing suicide. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, actually, they had hidden him away in a basement where they were trying to purge him of his evil intentions with their confessional, and wouldn't tell me where he was. And I was looking for him desperately. And, you know, finally, I basically used the only leverage I had over them, which was their fear of bad publicity. If I basically jumped out the window, and it was the only thing that ever worked, you know. I found out where my husband, or my now husband, was, and so, I mean, it was crazy, but...
You eventually got out of the church in 2005. You and Dallas are still together. You got a couple of children, I think.
Yes, yeah.
Clearly, you've had a lot of vitriol from the Church of Scientology for being a whistleblower like this. The unique aspect of your testimony is that your uncle runs the Church of Scientology. Have you had any direct feedback from him since you left?
No, he hasn't spoken to me since I left.
What about any of his immediate family?
No, I mean, well, I mean, my dad, I mean, not the Scientology ones.
But you're still in touch with your parents?
Yes, yes.
Do they have any contact with him, with David Miscavige?
No.
Nothing at all? So there's a complete disconnect because they left the church too?
Not since I left, yeah.
So basically, once you're out of the church, as far as he's concerned, that's it?
Yeah, I mean, there was some contact with him while I was still in there, because they wanted to see me and that sort of thing. But since I left, there's not been any.
What should happen to the Church of Scientology?
I mean, it should be exposed for the organization that it is, and it should not be allowed to do things that are illegal or abusive.
And to people who are watching this and saying, well, how do we know she's telling the truth? What do you say to them?
I mean, read my book. And again, I mean, obviously I couldn't have a tape recorder or take pictures of myself while I was doing manual labor. But there are things that would be more independent, like, do any of the children there have high school diplomas? Have they moved on to college? Those sort of things that could actually be looked into. And
of course, nobody would know better than your own husband. Dallas, it was in there with you.
Right.
Or indeed your parents.
Yes, exactly.
Final question. Has it been hard to repair the relationship with your parents, given that it was almost non-existent through all those young years?
I mean, I've definitely had questions about it and certain things that I didn't understand, but in the end, you know, I understand better than anyone what it's like to be brainwashed and controlled by the church. And, you know, I mean, you can't change the past. The important thing is that both of my parents are amazing grandparents, and that's all I could ask for.
Jenna, it's a riveting book. I've got to say, My Secret Life Inside Scientology and My Harrowing Escape, beyond belief. It is beyond belief in many parts. I'm glad you're out of it. And I think your evidence, as I would put it in this book, is very compelling. And it's down to the church to answer some pretty serious questions, I think. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.